Kamala Harris wants us to ignore the last 3.5 years as if they ever happened. She talks about January of 2025 being her first day as if she doesn't take Air Force Two to get to her next rally or to her next fundraiser. She's sitting in the White House right now, so everything that she says that she would do leaves all of us wondering, if it's such a good idea, why aren't you doing it right now?
I'm Carson Jorgensen. And this is the Carson Jorgensen Podcast. Hey, everybody. One of the questions I get most often asked in agriculture is, how do we find your food? How do we find local products? How do we connect to farmers or ranchers near us and buy directly from them? Crofter.com. Guys, the folks at Crofter have been working on this marketplace to be able to get food from the local producers to you, the consumers. It's a direct line from farm to table. Visit Crofter.com for more information on how you can get high quality food delivered directly to your home or pick it up straight from the farm. Again, that's Crofter.com. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. Today, I have a special guest here with me. Lee Zeldin is joining me today. Lee served in the House of Representatives in the United States Congress for quite some time. He then ran for governor of the state of New York in 2022. Lee has a wonderful family. He's been a staunch supporter of President Trump, and he has been traveling the country, helping folks to understand how their life was better under President Trump than they are now. Lee, thanks for joining me. I know you've been traveling the country and especially New York lately, trying to get President Trump elected. How are things going?
Not just around New York, but across the country to get President Trump elected on November 5th and to make sure that when he gets to Washington, that there's a Republican House and a Republican Senate to work with. Down ballot, there have been a number of causes, not just here in New York, but across the country to get involved with, including some ballot propositions. I would encourage everybody out there not just to get familiar and active with candidates you support on your ballot, but also taking a look to see what kind of possible amendments to the state constitution there might be in your state, because there's some stuff, some good, some bad, depending on what state you are in. And it's just important for all of us to be active and informed here with just a few weeks to go.
No, I know exactly what you mean. And people, when it comes election time, they're always so worried, what can we do? What can we do? But it's the off years when you should be doing something, keeping track of mail-in balloting, trying to get rid of that as much as possible wherever you can, and paying attention in the off cycle because elections matter. You spent last week, I saw you last week, you and I visited briefly before your roundtable with President Trump about agriculture in Pennsylvania. You want to give us a little overview of what you guys talked about and where you see this headed?
Sure. We were in Smithton, Pennsylvania. That's in Western Pennsylvania. I was leading a roundtable with former U.S. Ambassador to Germany, Rick Grinnell. And it was a roundtable with President Trump and local farmers and some elected officials talking about the efforts by the Chinese Communist Party to establish more influence over U.S. farmland. They have acquired now hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland. There has been a push. President Trump signed a bill when he was in office to make sure that there's proper review of purchases around critical infrastructure, military installations, and airports. But the expansion has grown, and we need to be concerned about supply chain, essential medicines. We have to be ready to defend ourselves more independently. And not being naive any further at all to the efforts by the Chinese Communist Party to access influence at different levels of government, to be able to access privacy data of individual American citizens. You can download an app on your phone and unwittingly not realize it, but you're giving access to some company to see other activity on your phone unrelated to that app, and it's a Chinese company. And in China, according to Chinese law, if the China government is requiring that company to turn over data that's acquired, then the China government is able to get it from those companies. So that has been part of our focus, not just with that roundtable, but elsewhere. It was specifically about U.S. agriculture, but I think that we really need to do more as a country to combat the Chinese Communist Party. Afterwards, went to a rally for President Trump in Indiana and Pennsylvania. More people were outside the arena than inside. The energy was great. And then went to Wisconsin, where last Tuesday and Wednesday I made 6 stops in 2 days as President Trump's campaign launched their first bus tour, and they launched it in Wisconsin. So looking forward to being back on the trail this Friday evening. I'll be actually back in Pennsylvania headlining their state dinner, but I'm sure that I'll be traveling to all the battleground states again between now and November 5th to make sure that we see President Trump and JD Vance victorious.
Yeah, no, I don't think a lot of people who are outside the political spectrum see what's at risk here in this election. I mean, this is a big one for a lot of people because we're already in dire straits. I mean, today is a pretty stark example of what you're talking about and why it's important. I mean, with the port strikes and what's going on. I mean, as of right now, and you talked about it a little bit last week. As of right now, 51% of our agricultural products are imported to the United States. We are a net importer of food into the United States. And I hear people, oh, I might not be able to get Christmas decorations or I might not be able to get Christmas presents. Guys, what about our food? What's going on there? We have put ourselves into a dangerous situation. And I think this port strike is going to exacerbate that. And I think now more than ever, and I think this is a huge pillar of President Trump's policies, is to make America great again, to bring manufacturing, bring agriculture, bring all of these things back to America. And I think it is of dire importance that we continue to do that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and there is a desire by some companies, if the conditions are not right in the U.S., to be able to outsource either labor, supply chain, partially, entirely, and when that company decides to leave, and their jobs go with it, and liquidity goes with it, in some cases we never get that back. In other cases, maybe one day we might get some of it back. But what we need is an environment where U.S. companies are able to thrive here in the United States, that they are able to tap into not just the U.S. market, but for companies that are looking for expansion opportunities, that they are exporting to other countries around the world, but they aren't exporting their company. They're not exporting their jobs. They're not exporting their labor. They're exporting their product that
Yeah.
is manufactured here in the U.S. Now, you have to understand why these companies decide to leave in the first place. And I think that there are people who get elected to government who either don't know or don't care to learn. Some people just, even if they know exactly why a company is leaving, they still they pander to uninformed voters with bad policy that's very destructive for our country. And President Trump right now is talking about reducing the corporate income tax rate, understanding that he can make America even more competitive on a global stage. Joe Biden comes in, he cancels the Keystone XL pipeline while fast tracking Nord Stream 2 to help transport Russian energy. And there's a push by many on the left to raise the corporate tax rate. Kamala Harris supportive of unrealized gains, which is insane. And we're at a
Yeah.
moment where policy matters, and for a lot of voters out there, the economy matters. It's their number one issue, and it's not about who has the nicest 20-page white paper. They just care about their price of eggs, bread, milk, gas, energy costs, and they've seen how much it's gone up in the last few years, and they're missing that Trump economy that just before COVID hit. I think that was the strongest economy I could ever remember in my lifetime.
Sure. Sure. And I think with that, people have to understand it's not about the people, it's about the policies. And whether you like President Trump or not, I mean, there's a lot of people who don't like his personality, but their life was so much better underneath the Trump economy. And that's, I think, the question that everybody should be asking themselves right now. Is your life better than it was 4 years ago? Does your money go as far as it did 4 years ago? How is your grocery bill compared to 4 years ago, because that's what matters to the middle class. And those are the questions everybody should be asking themselves. I mean, let's talk peace in the Middle East. Like, no new wars under President Trump. This is where we're at. And the fact that there are people out there who can't recognize that still boggles my mind, that they don't see that the policies in our country under President Trump and the direction of our country was so much better than where it is today.
Yeah, so right. And as you pointed out, there were no foreign wars starting. There were foreign wars ending under President Trump. Under President Biden, Russia goes into Ukraine. There's a fatally flawed withdrawal from Afghanistan. Hamas goes into Israel. And right now, the Middle East, in many respects, is a powder keg that can go off at any
Yeah,
minute. And they sense adversaries see a vulnerability at the highest levels of our own government, and we need to be resilient. We need to be resolute. And President Trump understood that we needed our adversaries to respect us, that the military option should be on the table, not because we want to use it, but because we don't want to use it.
hmm,
And I think that being strong on the world stage, being honest with friends and adversaries, making our friends step up is something that we should have. If we're truly friends with these other countries, then we should be able to have that honest conversation of what needs to get done to bolster ourselves. President Trump wanted to strengthen NATO, and the left here in the United States took that as that means that President Trump wanted to get out of NATO. No, President Trump was trying to strengthen it, realizing that burden sharing is key, and the investment that gets made by allies to do their part to invest in an organization like NATO ends up making NATO stronger, ends up making the alliance stronger. And I think that Kim Jong-un and Putin and Xi and others around the world, they saw President Trump as somebody who, when he was saying the military option was on the table, they believed him.
sure.
And when President Trump was talking about my red button's bigger than your red button to Kim Jong-un, and he was calling Kim Jong-un Little Rocket Man, there are people here at home saying, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy! President Trump is going to start a war at North Korea." Actually, if you understand the scouting report of Kim Jong-un, the way President Trump handled Kim Jong-un was perfect, because Kim Jong-un is homicidal, not suicidal.
Yeah.
And he was able to reach the point of, what? Maybe President Trump actually would follow through with these threats he's talking about. Maybe we should treat him seriously. Lastly, I would say it was good to have a military that was focused on being America's
Mhm.
defenders and not a woke social experiment. We saw it towards the end of the Obama administration. It started back up again in the Biden administration. I want
In a big
our
way.
military just focused on protecting America.
That's what it should be. I mean, that is what the military is for. The military should not be an experimental tank for all of their new think tank things that come out of Washington, D.C. It should be to protect the American citizens. And frankly, unfortunately, we have become the world's babysitter. But without us at the head of the table, the world comes unraveled. And I think it was Zanke that said it once. He says, when the United States stumbles, nations fall. And I truly believe that the rest of the world is looking at the United States right now saying, hey, we need you back at the table. But I think you make a pretty compelling point, and I want to go back and touch on something that you said there for a second. And everybody's worried about China right now, and a lot of everybody says, "Oh, we got to watch China, we got to watch these things." But the same goes with NATO, and the same goes with our free trade, quote unquote, free trade allies. There's been a lot of people that are taking advantage of the United States, whether that is our military, whether that is our free ride with NATO, whether that is our trade policies. Because, I mean, I look at agriculture all the time. The only two commodities we don't run a trade deficit on in the United States are corn and soybeans. Everything else we run a trade deficit. And these free trade nations are taking advantage of our domestic industry. And I see President Trump starting to talk about that a lot more. That it's time that we start pushing back against that, because we are undercutting domestic agriculture, domestic production, domestic construction. All of these things are being exported to other countries. And I think it's time we start having this conversation with our free trade allies as well.
Yeah, free trade is important with fair trade.
Yeah.
And when we're getting taken advantage of and there are other nations that are eating our lunch, then we need to start talking about our options to be able to level the playing field. And China was eating our lunch for a long time, and they
Hmm.
aspire to continue to do it. They would love to, be able to gobble us up on a whole bunch of different fronts. They've been doing it with their Belt and Road Initiative with other countries around the world for a long time. And when there's a discussion about putting on a new tariff, the desire is to avoid to need that. We don't want to have to add a new tariff. But when the threat is there, it's a message to another country that if you place your penalty on us, on American companies, that we have leverage to do the same to you, and we could do it even worse if we want to. And it's a reminder that ends up getting that other country thinking. And by the way, it's not just with adversaries abroad and competitors, it's also with nations that we are allied with.
Yeah.
They may just not, realize or think about at a particular moment that one action that they think is in the best interest of their country will hurt us in a way that will motivate us to utilize our leverage to make a decision that we feel is in the best interest of our country. And now you end up with some type of a trade war that isn't good for either side. So here's the best thing to that other country: don't do what you're thinking about doing in the first place. And if you've done it, it's time to walk it back. So President Trump knew that we have to not just take inventory of our leverage, but we have to show a real willingness to utilize that leverage to be able to advance America First policies. And I think that that's back on the table with President Trump coming back into office if he's successful November 5th. Is that if there's another nation out there, whether they're friend or foe, and they're looking for some opportunity to gain an advantage over the U.S., maybe to eat our lunch on something, well, then President Trump is more than willing to ramp up the use of that leverage, possibly in the nature of sanctions, or maybe it's in the nature of tariffs. But hopefully, just the thought of the United States utilizing that leverage is something that prevents that other country from forcing our hand.
Yeah, I mean, when you're the biggest kid on the playground, it's easy to get your way and be treated fairly. And I think we need to resume ourselves at the again at this head of that table and say, here, we're back to play. We are going to take care of ourselves first. I always tell people this: you can't fill somebody else's glass if yours is empty. And right now, we are severely depleted in this country, and the world looks for us to fill the rest of their glasses. And we don't have it right now, and it's time we put ourselves back on that track. And that, to me, is the case made for President Trump.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you with that. And one of the good things is that President Trump talking about these topics in 2016, there are a lot of people out there who are kind of curious, how does this play out? What happens if President Trump comes in? Is he serious? Are these real threats? Are these empty threats? Is it going to hurt us? Because I was told by this person in the media or this person in Congress that what candidate Donald Trump in 2016 was telling us, was something that maybe will hurt us. Well, President Trump had 4 years in office. He has a record. He's proud of that record. And I think when President Trump's talking about securing the border, improving our economy, becoming more energy independent and dominant, having a stronger, more effective foreign policy, fighting crime on our streets, it's not a hypothetical about the future. It is something that I would encourage Americans to look back at his record when he was in office. Kamala Harris wants us to ignore the last 3.5 years as if they ever happened. She talks about January of 2025 being her first day as if she doesn't take Air Force Two to get to her next rally or to her next fundraiser. She's sitting in the White House right now, so everything that she says that she would do leaves all of us wondering, if it's such a good idea, why aren't you doing it right now? Well, President Trump talking foreign policy, talking about economic activities that are important to advance America First policies. President Trump was there already, and he did a lot of it. He did a lot of it successfully, and he should be proud of that record.
Yeah, no, and I go back to a promise made is a promise kept. And I've spent a lot of time around politicians, as have you. And how many of you seen make promises and say, I'm going to deliver this, and then never even touch those issues? But with President Trump, the first time around 2016, he said, this is what I'm going to do. And with everything against him, he still accomplished most of what he said he was going to do. And the tone was always the same. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. And I believe that's what we'll get with him again. I know we're short on time. I know you've got to get on with it, but is there anything you'd like to leave folks with? Final closing.
Well, I would encourage people to go to donaldjtrump.com, donate $5 if you can, sign up to become a Trump Force 47 volunteer, get active. We need everyone doing their part. Definitely don't sit it out. Your vote does matter. Your most powerful voice right now is your vote. And we are in the final home stretch here, and no one can just sit on the sidelines expecting the rest of us to get it done for you. This is going to require all of us all in order to save America. And it's great to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
Now, thanks for being here and thanks for taking the time. Get back on the road and keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate it, man.
Sir, you as well. Take care.
Take care. See ya. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one.